most important fundamental to climb is picking the right champion. Most mid laners spend hundreds of games on champions that will never get them out of their rank. Not because they are playing bad, but just that the champion is bad to climb with. And after coaching thousands of mid laners over the past 5 years, I know exactly which champions work at each rank. So in this video, I'm going to give you guys the 5 best mid lane champions to climb with. But before we get into the list, let's break down what actually makes a champion good for climbing in solo queue. The first thing is the ability to make plays and or having a go button. Solo queue is a random environment. The enemies and your teammates are all going to be making a lot of mistakes, and you want to be playing a champion that is extremely good at capitalizing onto those mistakes. If you do not have that agency, it's really hard to swing the tides of the game. Another thing that we really value is the options or the agency that you have in the game. If you have an extremely linear play pattern where you can, for example, only group on mid with your team and you cannot really side lane at all, it's going to be quite hard for you to consistently find success in solo queue because you're not going to be able to get access to a lot of minions. You're going to become weaker, and versus some team comps, you're just going to struggle incredibly hard. A great example is, for example, Lux. Lux has a really tough time in the side lane, and even though she's very good at just grouping up with her team and looking for picks, if she cannot really find those angles, it's pretty hard to play the game. Another one is, for example, Vex. Vex is just not that good in solo queue due to the fact that if she runs up against a bruiser or the champ or a champ that builds a little bit of MR or Mercs, her side laning just completely goes out the window. She has no escape tools and it's just gone. So we won't be seeing these two champions in the list. Next up, reference points consistency. What do we mean with this? Well, options is good to have. Like, you want to be able to team fight, you want to be able to side lane, but there's also a thing as having too many options and zero consistency of reference points. I'm going to put it out there. LeBlanc is one of these champions. LeBlanc is a great champ because she can basically do anything, but because the world's her oyster and she can do too much, it's actually very easy to make the wrong decision in the mid game, which leads her to be in a position where it's too hard to execute and consistently climb upon. We want to have the combination of options, but also consistency in ability to choose the right options. Next up, ability to get lane control. I'm a really big fan of champions that are able to at least go even or win in lane, so you can then actually impact the rest of the game by translating your lead into the rest of the map. As mid lane is a very important thing to do. You want to be available for plays and having first move. If you're playing a champion like Kassadin or a very weak early game laner like Zilean, sometimes you do not have that ability to get lane control, and it's going to be quite hard to consistently climb if you cannot build consistency in your first few minutes of the game. Next up, meta consistency. We want to have a champion that is strong in the meta over a long period of time. If you invest a lot of time into this champion, you build a lot of champion mastery, you're actually going to get rewarded instead of punished by Riot Games due to, for example, pro play. Let's talk about Azir. Azir is one of these champs that stylistically could be really good for solo queue because of his options and his ability to make plays. He has got the go button. But then if you look at pro play, right, he's perma 46% win rate, getting absolutely blasted with nerfs, and therefore that makes him incredibly inconsistent in solo queue and definitely not a good champion to climb with. Next up, draft flexibility. You want to be able to play in many different games and still have impact. If you're very limited to having a good draft, otherwise you're going to struggle, it's going to be pretty hard for you to get consistent success in solo queue. Let's bring up this LeBlanc example again. LeBlanc is really good in certain drafts, but she's also extremely dogshit versus other drafts. What are you going to do when you play with a Mundo top and a Sejuani jungle and a Nautilus support that is building MR when you have an Evelynn jungle as well and the enemy mid laner goes Mercs? You can wrap it up before the game even starts. It's just not a good LeBlanc game, right? That's just how it is. The next thing that we really value is skirmishing. Once again, solo queue is a chaotic environment. There's going to be fights happening. You want to be able to participate in these skirmishes and control them. And usually games of solo queue are won through winning the big skirmishes. And the final thing, and this is a very overlooked thing that we're going to be rating these champs on, is the ability to teach the game fundamentals. If you are playing a champ that is super unique, then it's going to be really hard to actually learn the game. You're only learning the champion and not the fundamentals. So the ability to teach the fundamentals is like the cherry on top that makes some champions OTP only and other champions just generally good to climb. So now that we know the categories, let's jump straight into the number 5 on our list, which is Naafiri. Naafiri is one of the best champions in the game, all the way from Iron until Master, because she is the ultimate mistake punisher. Naafiri is so good in solo queue because of the fact that if an enemy is out of position, she has such an easy time of collapsing onto that with her high mobility and of course her ult, which is able to just pick out the enemies and just kill them, especially if you're ahead. Let's talk a little bit about Naafiri's lane. Naafiri actually has a really good lane due to the fact that she has good wave clear with her Q and non-committal trading. She doesn't need to go in to trade. She doesn't need to go in to access the wave. She even has CS assistant with her dogs. Like, that's the most bullshit shit in the game. There's just a dog every 20 seconds or so like that that's gonna walk up and CS a creep for you. That's fucking ridiculous. That's a free creep every wave. You gotta remove that shit from the game, dude. Regardless, right? Her mobility is so strong in the lane because it allows you to initiate trades whenever you want. If an enemy uses a key cooldown like Syndra E, you can use this mobility to then gap close and get really nasty trades onto them. You can also use your spells reactively, making it very hard for enemies to punish you in lane. Your laning phase is generally really safe, and as assassins, that's a pretty luxury thing to have. Another thing to note, one of the biggest strengths of Naafiri is that enemies just don't know how to verse Naafiri, and they can't stand the dogs. Especially in lower ranks, people mental block against this champ because they just perma-die the moment they get in range. They don't understand how the dogs work, they don't understand how to use their spells into Naafiri. You're gonna win so many games with just executing the champion normally. In the mid game, Naafiri has a lot of options, okay? She can side lane, she can skirmish extremely well with her ult, and her go button is one of the strongest go buttons in the game to punish mispositioning. A few other strengths that Naafiri has is due to her flexibility in the lane and her non-committal trading, she has pretty clear reference points. You want to play with your ult, you want to get to watch your wavelength breakpoint, you can start shove and moving or take good quality trades opportunistically when the enemies make a mistake. But not only that, she has an oh shit button, right? She has her W that she can use the moment she mispositions in the lane or she gets ganked. She's very safe in that regard. And that makes her a really good assassin in all of the lower ranks of League of Legends. Not only that, she's also quite consistent in the mid lane meta due to the fact that Riot is mainly targeting jungle Naafiri, and mid lane Naafiri just kind of does her thing always. She has a low skill floor and a pretty high skill ceiling, so it's pretty easy to get into the Naafiri and get some quick Ws, but there's also a lot of room to really explore and get the most out of all of her kit, especially with her dashes. There's a lot to learn with the dashes, learning how to land your skill shots properly. You can get very high with Naafiri. Now, there's a few weaknesses of this champ. She's not the perfect champion. She's pretty bad from behind. She's a threshold champ, and it can be very hard to find angles the moment you do not get ahead. She doesn't skill extremely well above Master because that's the point where a lot of players are actually going to understand how Naafiri works. They're not going to be caught off guard into random positions all the time, and you're really going to need to leverage the understanding of tempo and deep mid-game understanding to get good quality plays going. And for some people, that can be quite hard. She also wants multi-thread in her draft. If you play with a Lulu and you play with a fucking Lilia, it can be pretty hard to find proper angles in team fights if your team doesn't go in and you're the only one going in, you're instead dead. So you need to be very poised and patient in those positions. And mid-game can actually be very overwhelming the moment you get to like above Emerald, because you really need to start leveraging side lane, forcing people to respond to waves, identifying number advantages and forcing on them. So mid-game is not easy, but in the lower ranks, this champion is an absolute beast. So if you're in between Iron and Master, Naafiri is a great pickup for you. Now let's move on to our number 4 on our list, which is going to be Victor, and he is insane in Silver all the way until Challenger. And the reason why Victor is so good is because he is the ultimate isolated trader. He's really strong in the 1v1. He has bullshit trading spells in his E, which is almost unmissable, and his Q, which gives him a shield and a second part of damage. So he can take lane control in most matchups. And not only that, in the laning phase, he can also evolve his first spell based on the matchup that he's versing. If you're versing up against an assassin, take Q upgrade. If you're versing up against the mage and you want a little bit more wave control, take E upgrade. He's very flexible in that regard. He's got some laning weaknesses as well, and hence is why he's not higher on this list. So we're going to get back to that in a second. But first, let's talk about more strengths on his mid game. He is a front to back beast. If you got area control and the enemies need to run in, they are going to suffer. Your W and your ult is going to make it impossible for them to enter. If they try to get into you, you can use your E to slow them and poke them, and your E actually deals a shit ton of damage, especially if you throw it into choke points where the enemies are running in. Massive AoE. And you can guide people with your Q, right? And this is a thing that a lot of people really overlook, right? A Victor's Q and his slow and his W makes him a really decent side laner for a mage. Like an extremely good side laner for a mage. But you want to have it in isolation. In isolation, this champion beats almost any champion. And you can guide people in team fights, get multiple spell rotations off. Very, very, very strong scaler. And this is what we now see is Victor is a really strong laner and a really strong scaler. So this is a pretty unique combination that not many champions actually have. One of the bonus strengths that the other has as well is that his reference points are insanely clear, right? He does the exact same thing throughout the entirety of the laning phase. You play the mid-game fundamentals like perfectly, and that also allows him to teach these mage and game fundamentals really well. So this champion will learn you an insane amount about the game. He is also an incredible good blind pick. Like, even assassin matchups aren't easy for the assassins to play into Victor. Of course, there's some awkward matchups, but because of your build flexibility, Victor is not forced to run the same build every single time. You can go Rod of Ages. You can actually stat check a lot of these assassin matchups that think that they counter you, but then you just kind of counter them because they can't find the kill wins onto you. You can take these small win-oriented trades. You can pin them down in the lane, force them to drop CS, and it can actually be a very awkward game for them. He's also insanely consistent in the mid lane meta. He's not the best in pro play. He's picked, but not the best always, which leads to Riot not really targeting him with nerfs. And over the past year, this champion just has been very solid, really. He's just always been decent. You can always pick him up. And I've had insane success with Victor in my solo queue, running about a 70% win rate when I was playing in my climb to Challenger. And I was blind picking this champ too, so keep that in mind. Victor has a few weaknesses, right? He struggles from behind. Yes, if you fall behind in the early game, do some bullshit. What happens is that it can be pretty hard for you to actually get lane control because you're a champion that pokes the enemies, but you are then maybe struggling with controlling the wave state, where if they can then win the trades because they're ahead and you struggle controlling the wave states, it can sometimes take a while to get online, really like your first upgrade, and it can take quite a while to get there. Another big problem with Victor, and which is why he's not higher on this list, is his weak early game skirmishing. If you're not good at isolating the lane, right, what happens is that you rock up to early skirmish, you have pretty high cooldowns. What happens is that you're going to be extremely useless. So without your ult, your skirmishing is not that strong, and your skirmishing exponentially becomes better the more upgrades you get in your spells and a little bit more haste and, of course, AP. Victor is, of course, a mage, right? There is some forms of extreme threat that he struggles into. Of course, you can counter this with good quality itemization, like, for example, the Rod of Ages, or you could also do the Rocket Belt. These are all ways to deny the enemy extreme threat, and you can actually play as a little bit of a battle mage or a mage where you like bait the enemies in and are very hard to kill with your Q shields. So it's not necessarily inherent weakness because there's counterplay, but you definitely got to be aware of the threat assessment of the enemy team and understand when to build the right items, and that can sometimes be challenging for players. His learning curve is a little bit steeper. Getting used to this E and getting used to this threat assessment takes some time. And the biggest thing that a lot of newer players on mid lane really struggle with is that if you don't understand the mid lane fundamentals, you will not find success on Victor. Because Victor is he's like a blank canvas. The skill of your fundamentals will directly translate in your results into the game. If you mess up a wave state, you might just get punished for it. You might get ganked. If you mess up a reset, you might get stuck in lane without a lot of wave clear before your E upgrade. You might get punished for that. So you need to have good fundamental understanding to find success on the game. But this is not only a weakness, it's also a strength. If you mess up or if you feel like you struggle, you can pinpoint exactly where the problem is and you can find improvement and fix it. And then the final thing, his go button is online a little bit later into the game. People think that Victor has no go button. Victor has a go button, trust me. It is the slow of his W with the range of his E and the move speed. I've had so many solo queue games where I'm shifting from the side lane into mid lane. I use my Q onto the Scuttle Crab to move into mid, and then I just zap the enemy AD carry who's trying to catch the wave. And because they then get slowed with my E, I can chase them down with my R and they actually die or with follow-up engage from my team. Victor has a bit of a unique slow button. It gets online a little bit late. Hence is why he's number 4 on this list. Amazing champion, but there's better ones. And the champion that's better than Victor is our number 3 on our list, which is Echo. And Echo is amazing in bronze all the way until Challenger. The thing that characterizes Echo is the fact that he's a champion with options. In the laning phase, he has different modes. He can play the heavy trade style with his E and his high damage 3-hit passive where he can then just run out. But he can also play from a distance with his long-range, non-committal, insane wave clear. So the fact that he can play the lane, very flexible depending on the matchup, allows him to just get towards his important spike, which is his wave clear breakpoint at level 7, which he can then use to clear the wave insanely fast, generate tempo, and with his high mobility, he can then attend skirmishes and create number advantages onto the map. Echo, a well-played Echo, has very little counterplay in the lane. Like, your laning fundamentals need to be freakishly good to counter Echo, like almost perfect. His shield is very strong for trading, and not only that, it gives you access to minions and it has a very low mana cost. So his shield, if you use this well, will unlock your laning strength. In the mid game, Echo has options. Once again, he has an insane amount of flexibility in the sense that he can skirmish really well with his 3-hit passive, running around the edges of the skirmish, dealing an insane amount of damage. He can side lane really well, and he is really strong at hitting towers. Like, this champion murders turrets. If you let Echo off into the side lane and you disrespect him, he'll take that turret in 1, sometimes 2 waves, and he's gonna get insanely rich. Which is a problem because Echo skills really well, and the moment you get items on this champ, you can start one-popping a lot of champions, even bruisers, with a double rotation around your passive. He has a lot of build flexibility in the sense that he can go to Dusk and Dawn, which makes him very good. Shadow Flame that allows him to even nuke certain tanks while they are low. I've seen Echoes nuke Mundos below 40% HP just because of the W passive percentage damage, which is crazy. And his mobility is absolutely insane, right? It allows him to make tempo plays on the map, number advantage fights. He can be a pressure sponge in the side lane with his 3-hit passive move speed and his dashes and his ult. He can, of course, get out. Not only that, he's also got some bonus strength, right? His ultimate ability is an insane oh shit button as well. If you go in, you miss your combo in the team fight, no problem. You can just reposition and you can try again in your next rotation or just run out. You're fine. Very hard to kill champion Echo. Also because of the passive move speed. If people try to collapse onto you on the side, you can use your W for the shield. Use the passive move speed to then run away. And if they overchase, you can just use your R to get back to a different position. You can soak an insane amount of pressure. And he's actually been pretty consistent over the past few months. Especially since the new season. Echo's had a really good time on mid lane due to the Dusk and Dawn changes, and he doesn't really get hit because of pro play, so this champion's always fine. You can even blind him if you want in most matchups. There's a few matchups that are a little bit tricky, but if you ban Akali, generally, you can play the other matchups out just fine. Now, a few weaknesses that Echo has. Echo is also threshold champ. He's pretty bad from behind. If he doesn't have the option to really go in onto you, it can sometimes be pretty hard to get control of the wave because you can zone him off, and then he can really struggle getting a foot into the game. It can be sometimes hard. Echo is an assassin, right? But sometimes Echoes really struggle reaching key targets because the way that he plays is pretty linear. You really need to be using Fog of War. You need to be extremely poised to get into a position where you can actually access these key targets. A lot of Echo players struggle sometimes with blowing their load too early, which leads to them not being able to get a good quality fight going. It can also be very hard to understand when to fight versus group. Mid-game in that sense is very overwhelming, and his W is extremely non-intuitive. All the Echo players that I see in my coaching sessions, they've got no fucking clue how to use their W, and it can lead to really awkward lane states or skirmishes. The W is just a really challenging spell. It's a very versatile spell, and nailing that W takes time and practice, but once we do that, that's when our champion really explodes. So I wanted to give a little bit of a shout out to Sixten, who provided this amazing Echo background footage. He's the best Echo in EU West and a new coach in our coaching program in the Midlane Academy. I'm going to leave some links in the description if you're interested in getting coached on Echo or you're trying to pick him up. Check out that link, and I'm also going to leave some links to Sixten so you can check out his stream and his phenomenal Echo gameplay, which you can learn a lot from. Next up on the list, which is the number 2, this is Syndra, and she's amazing all the way from Silver to Challenger. Syndra is the ultimate control mage for solo queue. She has a really good laning phase with insane range, high base damage trading. She has self-peel in her E. She can take extremely flexible rune setups, which can get her through tricky matchups. And she wins basically every lane post her Q upgrade because of how she can combine trading with clearing the waves and getting first move and availability onto the map. Her mid game is next level strong as well, because Syndra is one of the strongest scaling champions in the game. The reason why she skills so hard is because of the upgrades that her ability gets, especially the E upgrade is really insane. The R execute catches a lot of people off guard and gives you insane kill ranges. And the 120 stacks upgrade gives you extra AP, which of course is really nice whenever you're playing a champion that has pretty decent AP ratios, especially since the buffs that they gave towards her Q. Now in the mid game, she has amazing front to back team fighting. If you are first in the area and the enemies need to run into you, they are under extreme levels of threat because you can place down your Qs in choke points, make it hard for them to enter. And if they then overstep or they make a small mistake, or you can use the Fog of War, it's very easy to find key targets with a QE and get massive damage going. Not only that, you can hit multiple people with your stuns. It's all AoE, especially if you maybe do an R into E combo. You can stun the entire team, 5 people, 1.25 seconds. And that's of course next level broken. She can also pick off targets that are out of position with E. Like I mentioned, it's the most broken spell in the game. It is defensive, it's offensive, and the range is mental. The range of Syndra is mental. Max range is about 1300 range of this spell, and that is practically the Fork range. The time where you come out of Fork, you can immediately use your QE onto someone and it can potentially land. This is AD carry's worst nightmare. One of Syndra's biggest strengths and why she's so unbelievably good in solo queue is because this go button of hers allows her to shove a move from the side into mid and then contest the mid wave with her team. And if any of the enemy AD carries mess up their positioning, it's extremely easy to then get an E onto them, especially when they're not mobile. And once you land the E, it's basically a death sentence because after the stun, they are still slowed after the E upgrade. And that makes this champion so unbelievably good in solo queue. She has insanely fast wave clear, gets access to many waves, and can do a great job at shove and moving. She's also really good at stalling games and preventing enemies from ending it, due to the fact that she has this nice amount of wave clear, and she has the threat of her E that makes it hard for the enemies to siege, because once again, a misstep can mean instant death. Now, one of the other strengths that she has is that she teaches the mage fundamentals incredibly well. And she teaches being able to get first move and move into areas first. She's a great shove mover. She is amazing at teaching how to land skill shots. This is a benefit, but also a little bit of a weakness. We're going to talk about that in a second. And she has been the top of the mid lane meta over the past 2 years. If you look at the past 2 years of mid lane meta, Syndra has been S tier or even above that Z tier for about 80% of all of that time. There's been a few months where she was a little bit weaker due to some nerfs, but generally speaking, Syndra is one of Riot's favorite champions because they want to see her in pro play, but she's not actually getting picked consistently in pro play. And the reason why that's the case is because if you play Syndra versus a skill shot champ versus someone on 0 ping, it can sometimes actually be kind of hard to land your skill shots. And that's just the reality, right? She's a little bit inconsistent in extreme pro levels of play on 0 ping. But the truth is, for solo queue, she's then absolutely perfect because Riot's got a buffer because they want to see her in pro. But then she's actually not getting played in pro that much, so they got a buffer and keep her extremely strong. With the E tool, with the flexibility that you have, this champion is one of the best solo queue champions in the game. She can also solo kill champions as a mage. She's not only a mage, she also can one-shot people and snowball extremely hard. The moment you're behind versus Syndra, you're going to really suffer because these ranges of her with her QE are just going to be consistently thrown at you. You're going to lose half your HP bar every single wave because of how this champion basically, you can remove the skill from the kit the moment you have your Q upgrade, and this is just a stupid champ. And that's why I main her. I like abusing broken champions, and you should too. So Syndra, it's a no-brainer, guys. This is your ticket to high elo. Now, weaknesses. There's a few weaknesses. We gotta be honest here. Even as a big Syndra salesman here, she is skill shot reliant, and therefore it can be hard to play early skirmishes with pretty high cooldowns, because enemies, when they have dashes or they have flash up, they can just dodge your skill shot. So you want to be a little bit careful until you're level 6. At level 6, you can really overcome your skill shot weakness because your R into E combo, that one blocks out all the counterplay. Her skill 4 is pretty high, hence is why I only recommend her in silver to challenger and not really below silver, because below silver it can sometimes be pretty challenging to pick up a champ with full skill shots that applies all the mage fundamentals. Yes, she skills well, she's like playable below silver, but not one that I recommend. There's better champions. E usage is really hard to master. This is what I see with all the Syndra players that I coach in my coaching program. E usage, there's so much room to gain, and it's really hard to review if you've not done an insane amount of repetitions like I have, because it's really easy to overlook and think that your E is fine, but then there's actually way more value to get out of this spell. It's a long cooldown spell, you need to nail this spell. It also grants players fake safety, so you think that you're safe, but then you use your E offensively and then you get engaged upon. Because of the cooldown being down. And this is something that sometimes people don't really properly resonate with in their brain. The final thing, which is a bit of a unique one, is Syndra is vulnerable to non-linear threat. So linear threat she doesn't give a fuck about. Good luck, the Strundle's running at you, doesn't fucking matter. You can just keep him at distance. You can kite him. She's really good at kiting linear champions. But non-linear champs like Zed, where Zed can do all of these dashes, jump onto her, that is a very hard champion to deal with. Hence is why I ban Zed, and for the rest, I can basically play any matchup. So that's a final thing to keep in mind. It can overcomplicate your side lane, but regardless, Syndra is definitely the second best solo queue champion in the game. Overall, this champ is a must play. So before we go into the final best solo queue champion at each rank, I want to give a few honorable mentions to champions that almost made the list, but they had one or two key things that made them not make it. First one is Ahri. Ahri is an incredibly strong assassin, really strong laner, very strong trader, insane skirmishing, and it makes her a very good solo queue champion with insane snowballing as well. She would honestly beat Echo and Ahri as an assassin if she would have been easier. Ahri is hard to consistently execute upon, and hence is why I couldn't really put this champion in all ranks video. If this would be an Emerald to Challenger one, I reckon Ahri would take the place of Echo and Ahri. But since it's not, I couldn't really justify putting her in there. She is on the hard side for lower ranks. Number 2 is Veigar. Veigar is an extremely consistent mage with extreme scaling and ability to teach the game fundamentals. It's one of the best champions for the lower ranks because of the games going longer and him scaling incredibly well, right? And the reason he's not on the list is also due to the ranks. I would not really say that Veigar is one of the best mages to climb above Emerald. If this would be a list from Iron to Emerald, I would put Veigar number 1, number 2, somewhere in the top. But since it's an all ranks tier list, there's much better mages that skill harder with the ranks. It can sometimes be tricky for Veigar to get lane control in the early game, and therefore he is on the honorable mentions list and not on the actual list. Katarina is the number 3. Katarina is honestly completely fucking overpowered. She's really flexible and an insanely strong skirmisher. The caveat with Katarina, and the reason why she's not on the list, is because she's only recommended above gold, and she requires to be a one-trick pony, right? She teaches the game fundamentals in such a unique way that what I see in my coaching sessions is that a lot of kata players, they're able to climb to a certain rank, and then once they get to that certain rank, they completely block out, and it's just this brick fucking wall where they cannot break through because of the fact that kata teaches the game fundamentals very specifically. And there's a lot of stuff that you actually don't learn on this champion, and because you mainly are forced to OTP it, because she's very complicated skirmisher. Hence is why a lot of kata players get stuck in Diamond or Low Master, and there's not really that extra step that they can take, even though that the champ is completely overpowered at the moment and an insanely good solo queue skirmisher with great team fighting damage and pick of tools. These are the 3 honorable mentions. Now let's move into the final champion, which is the best solo queue champion to climb with at each rank. And the number 1 on our list is none other than Ahri. She is the ultimate mid laner. She is amazing in bronze all the way until challenger. And the reason why she's so incredibly good is because she is the CEO of lane control and having first move. If you look at your identity as a mid laner, we're in the center of the map. We're playing a very short lane. We want to always be able to be having first move so we can either impact sides, look for skirmishes around neutrals, or complement our jungle and look for plays. And Ahri is the CEO for that because she has insane push. She has insane skirmishing threat with her ult, and she can play to trade and win lane opportunistically, but she can also just play on the wave and avoid bad matchups. She has insanely creative trading and movement with her W, where she can create a lot of space into matchups that could potentially otherwise be tricky. And at level 6, this champion is completely unlocked. She has medium to short cooldowns, which makes it also a really good skirmisher. And in the laning phase, right, she also has the sustain of her passive. She is just always available. Whenever you play Ahri, you have the ability to impact the map. It's just not whether we're going to have the impact, but rather what are we doing with the impact that we have. In the mid game, Ahri has basically the infinite options as well. She's one of the better mid lane side laners due to the fact that she has a safety with her ult and she has immense wave push. She also can put a lot of kill threat onto the enemy laner by linking up with her jungler and setting up ganks with her charm, which is very oppressive to play into. And therefore she can side lane, but she can also shove and move and then execute team fights. She has one of the strongest and longest go buttons with her R+E, in the sense that she can just R from a distance and then fish for a charm, and if that charm lands, it's a death sentence. Ahri is absolutely insane. One of the key things to keep in mind is that the biggest strength of Ahri, which is something that a lot of people overlook, is that everyone thinks Ahri is a skill shot champ. What if we miss our skill shots? Wrong, okay? Nowadays, Ahri is not a skill shot champ anymore. She actually can kill people without landing a single spell. What Ahri does nowadays is she does W max second, and the moment you reach 5 points in your W, you play Ignite, you play a very kill heavy setup, you just R forward with your Ignite, your W, and then you probably have Lich Bane and Malignance or BFT, and you can literally just 100-0 carries with your R, auto attack, W combo. And then all you have to do is like just land a Q, and you can then redirect that Q with your R, so it's almost unskilled to land a Q as well. Only the E is sometimes a spell that misses. And that means that Ahri can just kill people in a very unskilled way, because it's all just targeted spells. It's actually, Ahri in that sense is actually really unskilled. She doesn't need to land her skill shots. Big misconception a lot of people make, and that's why this champ is absolutely OP. Now, one of the key things to note is that Ahri, because of her flexibility, teaches the game fundamentals incredibly well, because she has options in the mid game. But a lot of people may be wondering, whoa, we talked about this option things before. Options can also be a negative thing, absolutely. The beauty about Ahri is that she has insanely clear reference points. She plays out the lane in very consistent fashions. She's team fights in very consistent fashions, and she has very clear go timers and back off timers around her ultimate. Her ultimate spell is what unlocks her. So you know exactly when you're going to be winning the fights, and you know exactly when you're going to be losing the fights. And that makes it easy to then figure out when you should fight and when not to fight. And that's why so many players in our coaching program have had incredible success with Ahri, because we teach all these game fundamentals properly in the guides, then reinforce them in the coaching sessions. And the amount of players that I've seen climb on this champion, almost everyone climbs on this champion. It's the best champion in the game. On mid lane, that is. Another few big strengths that need to be mentioned here. Ahri is good in many drafts. Ahri has the potential to play with heavy engage comps where she plays with multi-threat, and she loves that stuff. But even if you have like an enchanter support, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't play the game. You just need to adapt the way that you fight, and you can still play engage with your R if you find a good angle, but you can also just nicely front to back, play a threat, play the fight slower. You can play whenever you get multiple points in E, you can just play to peel your carry. So many options on how to play the fights. Now, there's of course a few weaknesses that have to be mentioned. Ahri, due to the fact that she has clear reference point around her ult, also means that she's bound to her R cooldown. And if you do not have R up, your champion is definitely significantly weaker than it otherwise would be. So you gotta be hyper aware of your ult cooldown and definitely play around it. She also can sometimes, especially from behind, it's gonna be more important to actually land your skill shots, because you're gonna need that extra damage to get your thresholds going or make picks. If you suck at landing skill shots and you play from behind, that's when this champion becomes quite weak. From ahead, no problem, you still one-shot anyone anyway. And like I mentioned, right, even though we have clear reference points, mid-games can sometimes be a little bit complicated if you know if you need a side or if you group. But if you get a lot of repetitions in and you get some coaching in that regard, this is very easy to fix, and Ahri is then your #1 champion to climb through all the ranks in League of Legends with. It's an absolute machine, and I can recommend anyone that is looking to climb to pick up this champion and put it in the pool. Which comes to the champion pool Ahri is a bridge champ. You can literally play any champion with Ahri in your champion pool and you're gonna have success. It's the ultimate mid laner, and I hope I've informed you guys properly. And I've also made you excited about playing this champ because you absolutely should. So thank you all for watching, guys. I hope I made you guys excited to try out one of these champions because you absolutely should. They're the best champs to climb with at each rank. And if you're like, hey Tim, I want to speed up my climb, check out the link in the description. We got intro, intermediate, and advanced guides for each champion onto our coaching program, included with the best quality coaching that's out there. Thank you for watching, guys. See you real soon with a new video. Peace out.